Good morning. We're ready for religion class, and this is a study out of Life's Big Questions, God's Big Answers. And today's focus questions are based on Chapter 3. Chapter 3's title is Does Evolution Explain the World? You have 5 study questions that you also have in Google Classroom. Number 1, with what assumption does evolution begin? What questions can you pose in response to this? Number 2, how is the second law of thermodynamics incompatible with the Big Bang Theory? Number 3, how is the law of biogenesis incompatible with the evolution of life? Number 4, state 2 problems with mutations as the answer for differences in species. And finally, number 5, what is the problem with transitional fossils in explaining the differences in species? Some interesting stuff. Let's start with Chapter 3. We're on page 21, and I will read. Feel free to take notes as we read, and also write down some things that maybe pique your interest, or some takeaways or things you've never thought of. Remember, you get to lead where your brain, with what your brain is making you think. You are the person in charge of what your learning is, and God's going to speak to you about things you need to learn that only He can point out to you. Does evolution explain the world? The theory's assumption. Remember, all worldviews begin with assumptions and have to explain what is real so we can understand the world. Let's turn our attention to the issue of evolution and the origin of all things from a purely naturalistic viewpoint without God, design, or purpose. The Big Bang Theory states that billions of years ago, all the matter of the universe was compressed into a point. The point exploded, hence the term Big Bang. The hot gases from the exploded point of matter went everywhere. Eventually, over billions of years, the gases cooled and formed the celestial bodies, stars, planets, and moons. That's how we got our universe. Any questions? Well, evidently, many Americans do have questions. According to a 2007 Newsweek poll, only 13% of Americans believe this theory. These are evolutionists in the sense that no God exists and had no hand in creation. While the same poll showed 30% of Americans believe God used evolution to create the universe. However, the biggest segment of the American public was the creationists, 48% who believe God created everything in 6 days. According to that poll, 9% of Americans don't know what to believe regarding life's origins. What's going on here? We're inundated with evolution from television, movies, books, school, museums, and other aspects of life all the time, yet almost half of our country doesn't buy it. I'll tell you why they don't buy it. It starts with an assumption. Remember, every worldview starts with an assumption, even if it claims not to. Carl Sagan believed only in the existence of the cosmos. The 1933 Humanist Manifesto states the universe was already existing rather than created. Evolutionists assume there is only a natural realm with no supernatural realm. A simple question to ask is, how do you know this is true? That's a powerful statement. How do you know there is only matter in the universe and not spirit also? Are you omniscient? Or are you all-knowing? Yet if you concede the point that matter making up the whole universe was always there, another question to ask would be, where did it come from? No one knows. Some say it came from a black hole. Some say it came from a mother universe. Where did those come from? No one knows. It is all one giant leap of faith, one large assumption, one starting point on the map. But the secular humanist will state that there is absolutely no God, since he is not a part of the natural realm, but of the supernatural. Please remember this when people say Christians use blind faith, but evolutionists use straight science. Everyone's map starts with a leap of faith. Either God exists or he doesn't. Are there both natural and supernatural areas on the map, or just a natural one? But what's the biggest reason people don't buy into evolution? It fails worldview test number 1. It doesn't fit the facts. Questions for the Big Bang Theory. You don't have to be a genius to comprehend that basic scientific laws must be broken for the whole theory of evolution to work. For a detailed discussion of all of these issues and more, please visit Answers in Genesis, the world's leading creation science organization, at answeringgenesis.org. As you recall, an explosion billions of years ago gave way to the universe working in clockwork precision. A question to ask regarding this Big Bang would be, what about the second law of thermodynamics? This law, remember it's not a theory, states that things in our universe go from a state of order to disorder, not from a state of disorder to order, unless acted upon by some outside intelligent force. This law of decay, or entropy, is used by creationists to argue against evolution, since everything we observe today is in opposition to the theory that an explosion gave rise to a perfectly functioning universe. To drive your point home, ask what order came from the explosions at the World Trade Center in New York City when planes hit the Twin Towers and they collapsed. Did you see order from disorder, or just the opposite? Chaos and destruction. If that is what happened with the demolition of two structures that worked perfectly, then how is it that an explosion of matter in space gave us a universe that functions with incredible accuracy and complexity all by itself? Here is your window of witnessing. The worldview map of what the evolutionist believes does not match reality. It doesn't fit the facts. Although he supported evolution, let's listen to Albert Einstein himself. Revered by evolutionists and creationists alike, discuss the issue. Here's what he said. I'm not an atheist, and I don't think I can call myself a pantheist. Everything is God. Pantheist is the vision, or the belief, that everything is God. We are in the position of a little child entering a huge library filled with books in many languages. The child knows someone must have written these books. It does not know how. It does not understand the languages in which they are written. The child dimly suspects a mysterious order and arrangement of the books, but doesn't know what it is. That, it seems to me, is the attitude of even the most intelligent human beings toward God. We see the universe marvelously arranged and obeying certain laws, but only dimly understand these laws. Our limited minds grasp the mysterious force that moves the constellations. I like that last part. Our limited minds grasp the mysterious force that moves the constellations. Cambridge University physicist John Polkinghorne notes the incredible precision of the universe. From its smallest particles to the vast systems of space, everything holds together and works. The very fact that this complex system exists at all implies that it has purpose. Scientists know the whole universe is incredibly finely tuned. But did the universe tune itself? How could lifeless matter without intelligence accomplish this? Or did someone with life and intelligence fine-tune it so we could live here? Sounds like God to me. That's why the article was entitled, Science Finds God, and why 48% of Americans believe God created the world in 6 days just like the Bible says. An explosion couldn't bring about order due to the second law of thermodynamics. Questions for life's evolution. Now, some will argue God didn't create the world like the Bible says, and he sure didn't create life here either. Aliens did. I'm not kidding you. The theory is called directed panspermia, and it states the first living cell must have come to Earth from beyond our solar system. Remember, there are no supernatural things in the evolutionary world view. So there must be a natural explanation for all things, even if it is from another planet. But think critically about this. How do these aliens evolve? From spontaneous generation, the theory that life came from lifeless matter. Life cannot come from lifeless matter due to the law of biogenesis, which states that life comes only from living things. Due to this law, there is no way chemicals in some soupy ocean 3 billion years ago formed life on planet Earth. This is why some folks actually believe alien life came here from another planet and it gave rise to all life as we know it. When people propose this, please ask for proof. Worldview test number 1. And then ask, how did aliens evolve from lifeless matter when the law of biogenesis doesn't allow that? What will be strange is how your faith in Jesus is belittled, and yet faith of a sort is exactly what is required to subscribe to this theory, faith in alien life. Let me go over that one more time because I kind of stumbled on the words. What will be strange is how your faith in Jesus is belittled by someone who's saying life came from aliens outside of our solar system. They both require faith. One of them requires a little more faith, and I think it's the alien version. Some scientists won't get into that science fiction stuff. They just admit their stubborn rejection of the Bible. Some scientists go as far as admitting that they don't want to believe in God, while at the same time admitting that they believe in life arising from lifeless matter, which they know is scientifically impossible. Next section is questions about mutations. Many scientists go to great lengths to show how evolution is true. We need to recall evolution is based on the premise that God doesn't exist, but the universe always did. It exploded all by itself and assembled itself without design, purpose, or God, and life came from lifeless matter. Remember, these beliefs go against scientific laws, namely the second law of thermodynamics and the law of biogenesis. So why stop now? If the theory of evolution is true and scientific laws don't matter, then let's continue to show how life evolved from simple to complex organisms via mutations. But don't be surprised if the evidence doesn't support the theory. Continuing to fail worldview test number 1. Does it fit the facts? At the beginning of the film, X-Men, Professor Charles Xavier says, "Mutation, it is the key to our evolution. It has enabled us to evolve from a single-celled organism into the dominant species on the planet. This process is slow and normally takes thousands and thousands of years, but every few hundred millennia, evolution leaps forward." Mutations work great in comic books and movies, enabling people to do all sorts of fantastic things. Command metal like Magneto or heal like Wolverine. However, real life is another story. And in evolution's story, one type of organism mutated and slowly changed into an entirely different organism over numerous generations. For example, fish mutated into reptiles, and reptiles into birds, and this is called macroevolution. The problem with this theory is that it has never been observed. We have never seen one organism mutate into another organism, except in comic books and movies. At Michigan State University, Professor Richard Lenski wanted to simulate evolution in real time. In his experiment, Lenski grew bacteria in his lab until he had the equivalent of 1 million years in human history. His conclusion? Essentially, nothing new was produced. In the end, the bacteria were still bacteria. Mutations have never led to a new life form. Furthermore, the mutations observed in science are almost always harmful to the organism and are actually a loss of genetic information. In his book, Genetic Entropy and the Mystery of the Genome, Cornell University professor John Sanford concludes that most, if not all, mutations are detrimental. Sorry, Wolverine fans. Logan can heal quickly due to his mutant abilities in X-Men, but no one in real life does. Contrary to what Professor X said at the beginning of X-Men, mutations are not the key to our evolution. No new organism has arisen from them, and they prove harmful, not helpful. However, to show evolution is true, evidence is presented that reveals that mutations occur. For example, insects become resistant to certain pesticides. Since these bugs are bug spray proof, this proves evolution. Not so fast. This is an example of microevolution, not macroevolution. Remember, in macroevolution, one type of organism mutates and changes into an entirely different organism. The earlier example was fish changing into reptiles, but in microevolution, the organism remains the same, but with a small change within the species. These insects may now be resistant to a certain repellent, but they still remain insects. There's a huge difference between these two types of evolution, micro and macro. Don't be fooled. One is scientific and observable, micro. The other is theoretical and unobserved, macro. Then what do we see in museums, textbooks, and movies? Artists' renderings of what these half-fish, half-reptile creatures would look like. Just as in X-Men, imaginations soar as artists depict amazing new mutated creatures and life forms, all based in fantasy, not fact. There are no transitional forms alive today or in the fossil record that show macroevolution. Or maybe we should just listen to the late curator and paleontologist of London's Museum of Natural History, Colin Patterson, who had over 7 million fossils at his disposal. He did not know of any evidence, fossil or living, that provides a direct connection from one organism to another. The truth by definition fits the facts, so a worldview map has to fit the facts as well, since it claims to explain the world with the truth. However, we've seen just the opposite here in this brief overview of evolution. This map doesn't make sense. The universe exploded and arranged itself, and life came from lifeless matter, becoming more complex and mutating into different life forms. These beliefs go against scientific laws and evidence. If you want to learn more about these issues, visit Answers in Genesis, the world's leading creation science organization at answeringgenesis.org. The Christian worldview map makes more sense. It fits the facts of an orderly world that began perfectly, but is now disorderly due to mankind's sinful nature. Let's examine this map in the next chapter.